Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Unraveling Politics, a weekly political analysis show where I go over the week that was in politics and look ahead to the future. If you are new, please be sure to like the videos, and if you're a regular, please subscribe so that you can get alerts as to when new videos come out. Before we begin, this will be the last regular episode for the next 3 weeks. Actually, August 3rd and August 10th, I will have special episodes because I will be on a cruise in Mexico, so there will still be content, but it won't be newsworthy content. And that's not the worst thing because August tends to be a slower month outside of a presidential election year. Also, fun fact, this is our 130th episode. Anyway, back to the show. So I will begin in Congress with House Republicans passing a $95 billion package to fund the war in Iran and other White House priorities ahead of the midterm elections this fall. Conservatives opposed the plan because there were measures to cut in other government departments. It passed 216 to 214, with one Republican and one independent rebelling and joining the Democrats in voting against it. Democrats argued that the money should be spent here at home, lowering costs for Americans. Hakeem Jeffries, who is the House Democratic leader, stated that Republicans had literally ripped out food from the mouths of hungry children, seniors, and veterans to sustain the Trump war machine. So, ironically, this is not far off from what Trump said about the Biden economy just 2 years ago. It was spending too much money abroad and needs to be focused more here at home. So, now what? Well, the House has left town and they will not be back until the end of August, and the Senate has some business to do, and they will probably begin the process of voting on this, including adding amendments, which may or may not tank the bill. Of course, nobody wants anything politically toxic ahead of an election. As for Republican leadership, Majority Leader Thune seemed dismissive of the House package. Not a surprise, the House is usually the more volatile chamber, and the Senate is supposed to be the more mature one, although a lot of the partisan drama happens in the Senate these days because of the filibuster. Concurrently, Republicans in Congress will be forced to fund the government yet again by September the 30th, even though it is over 2 months away, since they are out of town for nearly a whole month in August and several weeks in September during 9/11, as well as the GOP convention and Rosh Hashanah holiday. I absolutely expect this to run up to the finish line, and we might have the third government shutdown in a year. Unlike the last one where it took 43 days, no side wants to drag it out that long because, again, there is an election. Then there's the drama over the Save America Act, and I would actually think that Republicans in the House might shut down the government again. And why would they do this? Well, they want the Senate to pass the Save America Act, and they could say, well, we're not going to pass any more legislation, including government funding bills, until the Save America Act passes the Senate. Some radicals like Anna Paulina Luna have already said that she is not going to support any more bills, and President Trump has also said that he's not going to sign any bills until this thing is passed. The real squeeze is that Republicans will lose their majority in the House. That's pretty certain. The Senate is up in the air, and there are a lot of senators who do not want a shutdown fight right before the midterm elections, like Susan Collins of Maine, John Husted of Ohio, and Dan Sullivan in Alaska. So they might have to chase a voice of choice. Either keep the government shut down and hope that voters don't punish them for it, or vote to nuke the filibuster and pass the SAVE Act. Which would be worse? I'm not so sure. If this happened in October, there would definitely no time to actually implement the SAVE Act, so it would be completely pointless. But there are members out there who are done. They have nothing else to lose, and they might as well go all out. Johnson is reportedly sick of this shit, as he snapped at his caucus last week, and this will be a recurring theme in the final 5 months of this Congress. And I expect when Democrats take over next year, even if they have a slim majority, it will be smoother sailing in terms of getting bills out of the House. Overall, it's going to be worse because Trump will still be in the White House, and Republicans might hold on to the Senate. Speaking of which, sometime in August, I will release a video regarding the latest election polling. So stay tuned for that, especially because there is now a Senate candidate in Maine that's of the Democrats. Moving on, President Trump announced sweeping tariffs on 180 countries of 10 to 12.5%, utilizing a different law after the Supreme Court struck down the last set of tariffs. This new Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974 allows the president to impose tariffs on foreign countries engaging in unreasonable or discriminatory practices. The president cited the failure of countries to block the importation of goods from countries that use forced labor in supply chains, and I think this is fantastic. Americans and American companies can never compete with forced labor because that labor is free, while Americans need to be paid wages. However, some countries do ban forced labor imports, such as Canada and the European Union, although the administration said it is not enforced enough or it hasn't come into force yet. For example, the European Union's ban will not come into effect until December 2027. I will also say that the Carney government in Canada has been very buddy-buddy with China, and they should be punished accordingly. So I think this is a good move, although critics say the administration is using this as an excuse, and I believe Canada is getting 50% tariffs now. The administration might be using this as an excuse, but we really should not be encouraging trade with our enemies, including China and Russia. And I would expect more tariffs to come in the weeks ahead, and this will probably be challenged in court, but once again, the Supreme Court will probably take months to actually hear the case, and we might not get a ruling until the middle of next year anyway. On Monday last week, President Trump also announced new tariffs on Canadian goods using Section 338 of the Tariff Act of 1930. This will be from products from wine to cement, and it covers all goods regardless of whether they are covered by the USMCA agreement, which came into effect in 2020. It will not apply to energy, potash, and other things subject under the previous Section 232, like fish and critical minerals. So why is the president doing this? Well, according to the fact sheet released by the White House, it's because Canada has reduced motor vehicle imports by 22% in the last year and an 81% drop of imports of alcohol. They also claim that Canada has tariff rates on American cheese and dairy, which are more restrictive than against the European Union. For the most part, this only began when we began tariffing them, and that's basically all of it, and that is that you really need to know. And I have said many times on the show, I would prefer free trade with Canada with zero tariffs, as Prime Minister Mark Carney and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre have supported. And as a reminder, Trump was the one who renegotiated NAFTA in 2018, and it came into effect in 2020 during President Trump's first term, as well as the administrations of Justin Trudeau and Enrique Pena Nieto, and later Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador. Out of all three of them, Trump is the only one that is still in office. Then on Thursday, Trump announced tariffs on generic drugs beginning in the year 2028 and raising them in 2029. So this is better than what we did before, where they gave manufacturers a couple of weeks or even less of notice, and in some cases a few days. Trump stated that imported generic medicines would face no tariffs until August 2028, and then there would be a 100% tariff for 1 year, and in August 2029 it would rise to 200%. The goal is to capture the growing global industry of pharmaceutical drugs and bringing them back to the United States. So if these tariffs went into effect, which is a big question, that would basically mean the end of generic imported drugs. There would be no point in buying generic drugs if there were none that remained in America because there would be no reason for wholesalers to import them. And I think Trump will probably extend the deadline, and besides, he will be out of office by August of 2029, despite what he said at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, so that will not be up for him to decide. However, this is a step in the right direction, as I have said earlier, at least compared to before. Lastly, this is a follow-up to what we talked about over the last couple of weeks, and that was the race to replace former British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Starmer resigned on Monday, July the 20th, and he was replaced by Andy Burnham, who used to be the mayor of Manchester. He was elected leader of the ruling Labour Party on July 17th. In the UK, new executives can come to office without an election, whereas here we would only get a new election through president through an election, or the vice president takes over. Reportedly, Andy Burnham and Donald Trump had a conversation, and it was very good. President Trump added that they plan to meet in the not-too-distant future to discuss issues of mutual interest. According to Fox News, the leaders can cover the long-standing relationship and the challenges that Andy Burnham faces as he comes to office. President Trump has pledged American support. Trump stated on Truth Social that, quote, the Prime Minister has a big job ahead of him, but he will be able to do it, and of course the USA will be there to help, exclamation point, end quote. Andy Burnham also said that the UK wants the Strait of Hormuz to be open, as does the United States. And this is things that I would expect, especially as we're heading into nearly $100 oil and the challenges that we face geopolitically. Normally, you wouldn't see open hostility between allies, but we do not live in normal times anymore, so I will expect there will be public feuds as there was with Keir Starmer. Burnham will be Prime Minister until whenever the next general election is held, which will be no later than August of 2029. Therefore, Trump will have to work with Andy Burnham for the rest of his presidency and vice versa. Burnham should have a slightly easier time than Starmer did with Trump because Trump is politically weaker than he was 18 months ago. At least that is what the media thinks. However, I think Trump will only get more unhinged and bold in his actions as his presidency comes along, especially after the midterm elections. Once he can no longer get things through Congress, he might just do things via executive fiat, which he has done quite a bit already. The best case scenario is that any disputes that do occur happen behind closed doors. Perhaps what is most interesting, though, is Andy Burnham's choice for Foreign Secretary, which is the equivalent of the U.S. Secretary of State. Andy Burnham picked Ed Miliband, who was the climate change secretary until recently, and he was the leader of the Labour Party himself a decade and a half ago. He was never prime minister, though. So I'm thinking picking Miliband was a huge mistake for the simple reason that his past comments on Trump have angered the White House. After Trump's 2016 win, he stated that Americans should resist the worst of Trumpism. He also described Trump's victory in 2016 as dark days for America and the world. He questioned how the UK could speak of shared values with a, quote, racist, misogynist, self-confessed groper. And then in 2017, he said that Trump lowered the bar for idiocracy. And he was also present at an anti-Trump protest in London. According to The Independent, an article linked below, the administration is clearly upset with this pick. One source close to the president told The Independent that there is genuine anger about this appointment, that's their words, and Trump has deeply despised Miliband's push for green energy. And reportedly, quote, Trump doesn't forget, he will not forget, Miliband has some serious diplomatic repair to undertake. So a consultant also stated that Ed Miliband is known for all the wrong reasons in Washington, and that Ed Miliband is an unreasonable nut-zero extremist who blocked North Sea oil production but was happy for the UK to purchase Norway's fossil fuels from the North Sea. And I think worst of all, though, and this is only briefly mentioned in the article, is that in 2013, when the conservative-led government was in power, Miliband led the opposition against strikes in Syria, which essentially left the United States, us, alone, although that was during the Obama administration, so that might not be a problem, and Trump might not care about that. Boris Johnson, former prime minister himself, wrote that the failure to stand up to Bashar al-Assad, for which Miliband bears much of the guilt, directly led to Putin's invasion of Ukraine. An appalling choice for a foreign secretary, the Kremlin will be so delighted. And then there's also the fact that Miliband's father, Ralph Miliband, was a Marxist, so there's that as well. And then Miliband's brother, David Miliband, he was the United Kingdom Foreign Secretary, and now he works at some international organization. So Miliband is not the leader of the Labour Party anymore, but he still has that baggage 13 years later, especially when he went against the strikes in Syria. And I personally love Ed Miliband, but I think he was the wrong choice for UK-US relations, and that's going to suffer for many more years to come. And I think Burnham had only been PM for one day before that happened, and it already seemed to be going wrong. Before we wrap up, once again, as a reminder, we will be gone the next 2 weeks. We'll have some special topics, and I will return on August the 17th, where we will return to our regularly scheduled programming. So that's all for now. As always, please let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.